Have you ever thought about what the most eco-friendly way to travel is? Well, I have, because it's always been a dream of mine to travel across the contiguous United States without the use of a plane. So I ranked four different methods of transportation. The first being driving in a car, round trip from Boston to Seattle. Option two being taking a train. Option three, Greyhound buses. And option four, flying on a plane. I used Boston and Seattle as the start and end point for a round trip, purely just because those are two cities that I have the most reason to be in. Before we begin, I should do a disclaimer. I'm really not qualified to be doing this. I'm just an interested guy with too much free time and access to the internet. The metric we're going to be using to measure with is carbon dioxide emissions per person for a round trip. This is the metric that is most commonly used in analyses of this type, and I will be checking my work using the carbon footprint calculator, which can be found in my description below. Option 1. We decide to road trip across the country. My phone estimates a 1-day, 19-hour journey, but more importantly, it is 3,050 miles one way, or 6,100 for a round trip. Our 2015 Subaru Legacy has up to 36 miles per gallon, and because the majority of the trip would be highway, we will assume ideal conditions for gasoline consumption. 84.72 gallons of gasoline would be used. According to the EPA, gasoline emits 8.887 kilograms or 19.592 pounds of carbon dioxide per gallon of fuel used. Fun fact, a gallon of gas only weighs about 6 pounds, so you might be wondering, well, how can it emit almost 20 pounds of carbon dioxide? That is because most of the weight of the CO2 comes from the oxygen used in the combustion reaction. This means that this specific road trip would cause 752 kilograms of CO2 emissions one way. Multiplied with the return trip, this is 1.51 metric tons of CO2 emitted. We will be calculating the per person emissions, so with the 4 members of my family, we would each be personally responsible for 376 kilograms of CO2. The carbon footprint calculator gives me a number of 1.42 tons total, or with 4 people, that would be 355 kilograms per person, which is pretty close to my original number. Option 2. A train ride cross-country. Trains are really cool, but I've never had the opportunity to take a long-haul ride by rail. The route would be from Boston to Chicago, then on to Seattle, for roughly 2,800 to 3,000 miles by rail. While Amtrak doesn't seem to have any information about the fuel efficiency of their engines published in the years after 1981, it's also extremely difficult to calculate. Because trains have variable weight and trains measure ton miles per gallon, it's impossible to get a concrete answer on how much emissions would be caused. So instead, I used the carbon footprint calculator, which gave me, for 5,600 miles by long-haul train, gave me 60 kilograms of emissions for a round trip. Option 3. Greyhound buses say that they get 199 miles per gallon per passenger. That would mean that each passenger is responsible for 30.66 gallons of diesel emissions for a round trip. That would be 311 kilograms of CO2 per person. The carbon footprint calculator gives me a number of 270 kilograms of CO2 per person, which is pretty close to my number. Option 4, the quickest and easiest route, flying. As the crow flies, the distance from Boston to Seattle is 2,496 miles. Alaska Airlines, which offers direct flights, will be used for our example. Alaska Airlines operates a fleet of Airbus A320s and Boeing 737s. For our example, we will be using a Boeing 737-900ER. It uses 12.7 pounds per mile of jet fuel. Each gram of jet fuel releases 3.15 grams of CO2. This means that with jet fuel weighing 6.8 pounds per gallon, a 737-900ER does 0.53 miles per gallon, meaning an ideal flight from Boston Logan to SeaTac would burn 4,709 gallons, or 32,000 pounds of jet fuel, releasing 100,876 pounds of CO2. This equates to 45.76 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Per person, on a full flight with 2 seating classes, this means that each person would be responsible for 517 kilograms for a round trip. However, aircraft release CO2 at high altitudes, called radiative forcing, which supposedly adds a multiplication factor of 1.891. With this in mind, we get a number of 978 kilograms per person. The carbon footprint calculator gives me a number of 1.11 metric tons, or 1,110 kilograms, which is pretty close to my original number. To conclude, every type of transportation has some sort of impact, and in fact, almost everything you do has some sort of impact. So tools like the carbon footprint calculator are useful for figuring out how much of an impact you personally have, how you can improve that, and that's a good first step. But a second step might be how you can offset these emissions. Consider things like carbon credits or donating to causes that are positive for the environment, such as reforestation efforts or methane capture. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it. I will be making more videos about the environment, random science things that interest me, and maybe in the future, a train travel video. You never know. Thanks for watching.